Welcome everybody to the pilot episode. We did this show because I am deeply passionate in finding my own potential, but also helping others find their own potential. And what that means, essentially unpacking that is finding and helping others reach success and happiness, and understanding and exploring the relationship between both of those concepts. So we're going to bring in a couple of guests each month, and also have a chat with my good mate Nick Quinn each month to discuss these ideas and learn from others who have reached much higher success and happiness than we have, so that you guys can take away, and I can take away, the tips, tools, and techniques that they've implemented to reach those heights, in the hope that we can improve our lives and for us to reach our own potential. So thank you very much for coming along in the journey. And this episode, I sit down with Nick Quinn, my very good mate. We've been friends for over 10 years. He is my Ultraman team captain. I speak to him on the daily, so I hope it is worthwhile. I'm sure about 3 people will be listening to it in the early stages, but that is totally fine. So sit back and enjoy. This is the pilot episode of the podcast. And I presume myself and my mother will be the ones listening to this.
Correct.
So I appreciate your time.
That's all right.
And if you want to shout out to Jude, by all means.
Jude will only listen because I'm on here.
100%.
Wouldn't have listened otherwise.
There'll still be 1,000 listens.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably our most listened up episode because of Jude.
100%.
She is a Nick Quinn fan. Anyway, so I worked out that we have been mates for around 10 years now. And I would say, talk on the daily, if not every other day.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it'd be a surprise to others, but a lot of the chat is superfluous, but also then it becomes a time where we get fairly deep very quickly about particular topics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good summary.
We've been on, other than being mates, you are my team captain for Ultraman, and we've done 3 of those now, and we've been successful 3 times thanks to your tutelage and guidance. We've been on a number of road trips with other races, Jarvis Bay, the Kosciuszko.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel very fortunate to have you as a mate.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this journey the other day, and I don't know if you remember, but Ultraman Australia, your very first Ultraman, I actually was only originally going to be in the car, I think it was one day, because I had other stuff on, other commitments. And towards the end, I think with permission from my wife, I was then available for all 3 days. And so sliding doors moment, I think. Without that, if it had proceeded that I only sort of rocked up for one day, maybe the whole, definitely the Ultraman journey might have been different for me, not for you. I don't think I've done too much, but in terms, wouldn't have changed anything for our friendship. But yeah, just it was an interesting thing I was thinking about.
Yeah. That is, I didn't know. I don't recall that. So
I'm not sure if you had someone else planned to be in the car for those days and that fell through, or what the circumstances were. But yeah, I remember I was very much only meant to be 1 or 2 days, not the full 3.
Yeah.
And it all changed at the last minute.
Yeah. You downplay that, and I know that's because you're modest. You know how much you heavy lift that whole 3 days every time. But I guess more on a friendship side, I feel like I speak for myself, the most about me that I think anyone else does in the world, which is unique. I think as a late 30-year-old, to be able to have a mate like that, to be just so, and I guess that comes from a level of trust in the saying that I can tell you anything. And I know that we've cultivated an environment where there's no judgment and you're there to help and support.
Yeah.
And I think also it comes from a place of, like you hear sometimes people saying, like, you want friends that will celebrate your wins as their own. And there's not too many people that I can think of that I celebrate more than for your successes.
Yeah.
And when you win in life, I can't explain that I genuinely feel that it's like it's mine. And, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's something happens at home with the kids or whether it's you at work or whatever, it's almost like that's happening to me.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of males do struggle with being open with other males. And I think you've helped me open up to you, and hopefully that's allow me to open up to others and be a better person. But I think the fact that it's, as you get older, you get a smaller and smaller circle and you become more reliant on that circle, if that makes sense. It's a tighter environment, and to be able to have someone who can be that sort of go-to all-in-one type person is probably pretty rare and probably something that doesn't exist a lot in the world, but thankfully I think we've got it.
For sure. So with that being said, I would like to be able to, along this podcast journey, we have a chat every month outside of the other episodes, and we talk about a specific topic of that month. And we've done it in the past where we've been talking about something and be like, oh man, I wish we could record that, because there's some value there that I think a lot of other people, both men and women, can take from. And not to suggest that we profess the answers, but it certainly is the stepping stone or the starting point of a good discussion about particularly just life in general.
Potentially a lot of the conversations we have and the problems, in inverted commas, we try and tackle, they're not unique. And if nothing else, to have people know that they're not alone in some of those sort of troubles or opportunities or whatever they might be in that come their way in life. It's hopefully that helps as well.
So Nick Quinn, you are born in Gympie. Now reside in northern Brisbane.
Yeah.
On the water.
I spent the first 17 years of my life pretty much exclusively there. One of 3 boys, and we, as growing up, we didn't want for anything, but we weren't extremely well off. When I look at what kids experience today, the furthest we travelled as a kid was Brisbane. The first plane ride I ever went on was to Sydney when I paid for it myself at the age of 20. But in saying that, our parents dedicated a lot to us, and we were very sporty kids and travelled the region, the Wide Bay region, playing any sport we could get our hands on, and that was our life effectively. We had a really good childhood and grew up in a great family. But yeah, we weren't wealthy by any stretch. And pretty much as soon as I finished school, might have been the day of, I packed up my, whatever it was, 1988 Ford Falcon and drove to Brisbane. I was done with the small town and wanted to get out of there, and came to Brisbane to study engineering, and did a dual degree in environmental science and civil engineering, straight through. So it was 4 years of punish to try and get 2 degrees in 4 years, and went straight from there into the workforce. And that's pretty much it. For sort of the I guess my youth period, spent time in Brisbane, working, and then actually through getting involved in triathlon, met my wife, Emma, and we've now got 2 kids, Cooper and Isabella, who are 7 and 3. So, and as I said, we live north side of Brisbane, and I guess without putting enough in lights, I think we're at a good spot in life. The kids are just got to that good age where they're fun and they've come out of the real baby sort of phase, but they still want to hang out with mum and dad. They don't find us too uncool yet. So yeah, it's things are going pretty good.
And I guess the purpose, I think the idea or the focus of this episode as the pilot episode is to center around what this podcast is sort of focusing on, in my view. And that's the relationship with success and happiness. And those ideas are obviously so subjective in terms of how someone would perceive how to obtain, or if they can obtain, success or happiness. But would love to talk to you today about, I guess, those ideals generally, what they mean to you, what you're trying to achieve at the moment, and I guess the relationship between success and happiness generally.
I guess success for the longest time for me has been compartmentalized. It's almost that success on a work front, success on a family front, success as me, myself, as in who I am. They're almost measured differently in the different parts of my life. Success in work I've been very driven to try and climb the corporate ladder historically, almost to a fault at times, but that traditional view of what success looks like, have the high power, high paying job with the wife and the 2.5 kids and the expensive German car and the blah, 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 that I guess is the portrait that you're given potentially growing up as what success is and what you should strive for, and the reason why you go to uni and the reason why you do all those things. I only recently I probably unpacked that success doesn't equal happiness, or the traditional view of success, or the portrait of what success is, doesn't necessarily equal happiness.
Is that because you think, and I'll take the time to ask this question in long form so you can wipe your brow. Do you think that you've come to that realization because you have reached that period of time in your life where a lot of those boxes have been ticked? And not to suggest you're unhappy, but that it's like you've reached a certain level and gone. Because from externally, people would look at yourself and myself and go, man, they're two really successful people, maybe in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is beautiful about us, is that, you know, we are so close, but our lives are, you know, it's similar in a lot of ways, but also different in others.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and people laugh about that I got a job. I don't think you laugh about it now. You did. But, you know, I don't have an office job, and you were there when I was leaving law and going to do my own thing full time, and that was at the expense of a corporate ladder and a high wage job.
Yeah.
Whereas you've been extremely successful. Probably, again, your humility comes through there, that nobody really understands how successful you have been in a corporate space. But you probably downplay that in the sense of you don't look at that it's every single moment, every decision, every conversation you've had at work that's built that trust or built that pathway to your success. But so tell me about that realization for you in terms of going, well, success doesn't equal happiness there for you.
Yeah. And I guess for me, it's come incrementally, but only recently. And it's come a little bit from the outcomes of what I used to measure and the thrill that it used to give me. It's not there anymore. So I was very driven by a new position, a new role in my line of work, a new client, a new contract, a new line of business. And that was a very clear piece that I could measure as that's a successful outcome. And
that would get you amped.
There's a buzz associated with that. Not so much anymore.
Do you think that's in line, or that's because you've become more self-aware in recent times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my mind and my position in life has allowed me to view more things. So as I've climbed a corporate ladder, I've actually realized now what's involved in being a CEO. I don't think I want that. So suddenly then those boxes that I was checking as success, as what success looked like, because they were taking me to the end goal that I thought I wanted. Now that end goal has shifted. That's not necessarily what I want, and therefore I think the success piece, or those milestones and those things that get you excited, the wins, that just don't attract the same outcome, I guess.
So do you think, so you're saying that what you thought or what you projected to be the end goal of happiness was, let's say, a 5-step process of success.
Yeah.
And you've realized that, well, the end of that is no longer, I can see that it's not going to be, that's not the answer of happiness.
Yeah.
So have you flipped that and to go, well, now I'm wanting to focus on where happiness is going to lie?
The traditional view of success doesn't equal happiness. So, and I think, most multimillionaires will probably tell you a similar thing in terms of they strive so hard to become a millionaire, and then when they get it, it's actually a letdown and a disappointment, and they're empty. There's nothing there. They don't know what to do with themselves. So by actually trying to focus on what does bring you happiness versus what you're meant to do in terms of being successful, I think then drives you into different spaces and approaches life differently. But you have to unpack, I guess, what you think is going to make you happy first.
Yeah, and that's in itself a confronting question, right? To think, well, what will make me happy ultimately?
Yeah, and I think that changes with age and stage in life and all those sort of things. Like, with us at the moment, we've got young children, and there's a certain amount of drive and to be around them, and the joy that it brings sometimes to be around them, not all the time. but and I look at a lot of what I'm trying to do at the moment is to try and get what I need from work, in terms of I still enjoy work and I still want to kick goals in that space, but I don't want it to be at a cost of everything else and be all consuming, because I still want to have time with my family and be able to switch off and be present, and be the father and husband as well, not just the guy who goes to work for 80 hours a week because he's trying to climb a corporate ladder. But I then might look either 10 years back or 20 years forward, and that may change. When I was 25, I got a real lot of happiness from being the youngest shareholder at Oricon. And that was happiness. And in 20 years' time, my view might be different because the kids are grown up and left home, and therefore I'm not driven to be available and present for them to grow up. I might be driving at something different.
So I think it's probably like the softness approach to your own understanding, or your own what you wanted. able to acknowledge what you want for success, or what you want to be happy for, happiness in the moment or around now, and be fine with the fact that it's different than it was 5 years ago, than it will be for the next 5 years. And I think, you made the point of, I still want to kick goals at work, but that's not that important because you want to be home. But the important bit there, I think, is because you want to be at home, and, and that's you as a devoted father and husband, and to be able to acknowledge that. But I mean, I feel like you're torn still with not, I guess, because you're wired the way you are, I feel, in the sense of you're so driven, even trying to do the uni in 4 years that was meant to be 5, right? Like, in everything you do, you're full noise, that you're sometimes compromised because you want to be the everything dad, the everything director, the everything, you just want to be everything that you do at full rate.
Yeah, and so I think there's an element of the modern world to all of that we get caught up with, and I wish I wasn't guilty, but I think I am, of comparing and trying to put a front on who you are and what you're doing, so that the rest of the world looks in and sees success.
You really think about that?
I can't say I actively think about it, but I can't help but think that there's an underlying to some of the actions we take, that, and maybe it's not to show other people, but I still believe that we grew up in a generation where being wealthy meant being happy, and so therefore,
probably because you didn't have it.
I think so. Yeah.
But I remember you saying, like, you would get to a race, you'd do a race, a triathlon, you'd get back to work, and you and your, I don't know what you guys do at work, where you're smoking cigars or having cognac or whatever you do every morning, but you're talking to your fellow shareholders at the shareholder meeting on shareholder day, and after you've counted all the cash, you talk about the fact that you've done this race, and that it matters to you that they look at you differently than the others, or that when you told me that surprised me, that the idea of caring what other people, or someone that, I don't know, that you're different or that you're unique, is it that, or is it that you're better than them, or?
Yeah, I don't think it's better. I think it comes back to elements of insecurities and recognition. There's an element of striving for acceptance and recognition, and I think that's an undertone to a lot of things that I do, in terms of sport or work or whatever it might be. The greater the accomplishment, the more recognition, and in the rest of the world's eyes, and I still, I guess, value that recognition.
Sure. I struggle with the idea of, like, I'm so goal orientated, and particularly obviously athletically, that even since 2015, when I planted the idea of giving up law, and from that point onwards, I was like, I need a big athletic goal, and I've just upped the ante for almost 8 years now, and now it's getting to the point where I'm almost gone too far with it. But it does worry me a little bit, because as we know, I feel like I'm a better person with that goal, and without it, I'm aimless, and I haven't actually found a goal that I guess inspires me, or that propels me forward outside of the sport.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether this race coming up will be that'll be it, or whether I actually go and do another 5 years of the sport. But it can't be because I'm worried that I'll be less of a person to the people that are important to me without it. And I got to figure that piece out, to go, I don't see, and I've come up short a couple of times where it's like, okay, not necessarily who am I without a goal, but I think it's common that if you've got a big goal or a big purpose in life outside of your own responsibilities, then you're walking around with your head held high. You've got direction, right? And it's that purpose of going towards success, right? However that is defined, that I think provides a lot of happiness for me.
Yeah.
And so that idea for me of success and happiness, I sort of feel like they, I think as you said, you can be successful without being happy. And I think you can also, there's a lot of people out there that are happy and that don't achieve or don't aspire to the success like we would.
Yeah.
But in any sort of space, it doesn't matter if you're a high flying shareholder or an athlete, but it could be success in anything you do. You can achieve that, and that relationship can still exist with your pursuit of happiness. And they're so subjective, but that's the purpose, I think, of this podcast, is to be able to bring on guests, talk to yourself on a regular basis, to explore this relationship of success and happiness, and how we can, merge the two. Because if we can, my point is, if we can find a way, whether that's, using the tools, techniques, strategies that other people who have been far more successful than us or far more happy than us use, that we can both aim to be successful in everything that we do, but also have this consistent underlying level of happiness in doing that, then God, that sounds amazing. Why wouldn't you aspire for that?
100%. And I think now, more than probably any time in history, there's an opportunity, and that each of us possess, to define that for ourselves. As I mentioned before, I think historically there's a very firm view of what success looked like, and therefore if you achieve that, you should be happy. Whereas the world, as it stands at the moment, those two things can look vastly different from one person to the next. So to be able to talk to people in different forms of life, and be able to understand how they've got to a point where they can either have achieved one or the other or both, and be able to have listeners, as you said, I guess just take some different point of view than what the traditional media or the traditional way of thinking might have been. I think it's really, really powerful.
I look forward to having you on each month.
Perfect.
I'll make sure there's air conditioning in the room next time.
Can we talk, as NFL or, I'd like the little side barbs.
That's fine. We can definitely have an intro of, you can give the audience the latest summary, the monthly summary of American sport.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it'll be good.
Sounds good. Awesome. Happy days.
So that was it. That was the first pilot episode of the show. Hope you really enjoyed spending time with Nick and I. That does sound very similar to a normal conversation that he and I would have. So anyway, that's we'll be doing that each month, and I'll be bringing in a couple of guests as well each month, and hopefully releasing an episode each week for you guys, so that we can obtain and develop and learn the tools, tips, and techniques of reaching your own potential and finding that success and happiness. Peace.